Hello. This is a big question that I'm going to answer. This is one of those ones that when I read it, I think, oh gosh, I hope the answer really does come to me when I hit the live button. So let's see how this goes, and I hope I don't botch it. Okay, a deep and meaningful question for you, Jin, about energetics, I think. And this particular person, what I love about them is that they ask the question. It doesn't always fully make sense to them, but the interaction that we tend to have on courses together and the coaching, it seems to land really well. So, what I really love about this particular person is they ask the question anyway. Okay, a deep and meaningful question about energetics. How do emotions affect physical reactions? If I send someone love, how does that actually happen? In yoga and Vipassana, etc., I've been told to breathe into your pain, explore it, and the pain will pass. How do I breathe into a body part? How do I evolve to a point where I have an understanding and I guess control over my emotions and their outcomes? Okay, so I'm going to have to work through this bit by bit. And if you're new here, a lot of my work is primarily around emotions, but I see and I believe and I've experienced that when you start to process your emotions, empty out your emotional cup, you get to experience the energetics, which is all the crazy, amazing stuff, tap into manifestation, etc. And I really, truly see everything as one now, and also use a variety of metaphors and analogies, but really it's all the same. Okay, let me tune into this. How do emotions affect physical reactions? Okay, so at a really basic level, I say that your emotional state is going to affect your physical body, and your physical body is going to affect your emotional state. So there was a question on this thread that I answered a little earlier around rounded shoulders and posture. And Amy Cuddy is quite famous for talking about power postures. She's got a great YouTube video if you go and watch that. And she talks really well about the biochemistry and all the technical side of things that happen when we take on a certain physical posture. So she really talked more about physical affecting your emotional state. So the power posture, stand up tall, chest out, and you will start to feel more confident. It's that classic smile even if you feel sad, because the body has a memory that when these muscles activate, different hormones and chemicals are released in your body. Now, I don't necessarily believe smile even if you feel unhappy. I'm all about feeling the negative space emotions as well. But yes, your physical body can affect your emotional state. And likewise, your emotional state can affect your physical body. So in the previous example about the rounded shoulders, I talked about when people tend to feel sad, we can just look at them and we can see by their body language that person might be a little bit sad. Now, we can go a step further, and even if we're not looking at someone and we're sitting next to them on a plane, in a seat, maybe at a distance, we can feel their energy. We can feel that they're angry. We can feel like we want to be near them, and we can feel, oh, I don't want to be near this person, and I want to get up and I want to move away. Okay, so that touches a little bit into the, if I send someone love, how does that actually happen? But anyway, that was my basic level sort of explanation. Amy Cuddy, physical affects emotional, and very much emotional affects physical. Classic example of feeling depressed. However, when we feel happy, we can walk past someone on a street that we don't know from a bar of soap, and we know that they're happy. We get different feelings from them. And I believe that we can understand other people better once we understand ourselves, and we get better at reading the energy of people, the energy of a room, when we do more work on ourselves on the personal level, the deeper emotional level. And then there are some body types, constitutions, and personalities that are more sensitive than others, but I do believe, a little bit like intuition, is that it is all accessible to us if we choose to work on it, be sensitive to it, be aware about it. You know, with anything in life, we can choose to block things out, or we can choose to focus on it and deepen our skill set and our knowledge and our experience of certain things. So I talk a lot about this in my groups. I guess love is one of those feelings, states of being that in the personal development world, spiritual world, a lot of people try and aspire to. So there's this classic forgive, just approach with love. And I do believe, and I know some people that I feel and I know that they are coming from a place of love. And you feel it from them regardless of whether or not you agree or disagree in a conversation. And I think for some people, when you're looking at people who are truly coming from a place of love, it can sometimes trigger you simply because that's a place that you potentially aspire to be, but you can get quite nasty when you're in that triggered state. I remember many, many years ago having some people in my life who were incredibly nice that I actually thought something was wrong with them. It's like, how can you be this nice? But as they sustained it for many years and almost decades, I was like, all right, this person's got something about them. And especially being in the space that I work in, having been a therapist, an osteopath, and now moving into this coaching space, I'm meeting a lot of people that I guess are approaching their work from very different spaces. And I always like to pick the healers and practitioners that I work with, regardless of qualifications, that I feel that they're truly coming from the heart space. They have a gift. And what often happens in this situation is I find that Ashish, actually, my astrologer, is a good example. That's the last interview that I did as around 100, episode 126, 27, something like that. He is someone that I see is truly operating from the heart space. And I don't want this to come across the wrong way, but he will say it as it is. He will speak his truth, what he knows, what he sees. And it doesn't matter if you agree or disagree with him or not. It's not that he doesn't care, but he delivers that message. And then if it's on this timeline in this journey that you hear it, that it lands for you, then great. So I will come back to how does it work that we send someone love and that they actually feel it, or how does it actually happen along those lines, is this whole thing of forgive and come from a place of love can be very difficult for some people. And I say it's often difficult because there's the emotion, the negative space emotions, which are just as valuable as the positive space emotions that are stored. And it's not a mind thing. You can't just say, well, I forgive, I love, because you know that you've got this deeper feeling that actually I can't. I've got resentment, hatred, injustice, all these kind of emotions that get stored in that heart chakra. So I find it quite bypassy when people go, just forgive, just love. And it's like, okay, great. I'd love to do that from my headspace, but I know that I'm just telling myself that and I'm not actually embodying it. And embodiment and experience is the ultimate goal. Energetics is in the experience, is in the embodiment. So the heart and the love and the forgiveness, that's like comes up here. And if you're familiar at all with chakras, which is something I teach really in depth in my release course, is that you have other chakras that feed into the heart chakra. So you've got your base, your sacral, and your solar plexus. So in my mind, you can't just jump and bypass to the heart. You've got to work on all the other stuff. You can choose to work on all the other stuff, so it gets easier to move into the heart space. And I've been sharing with some of my groups lately that most people that come into my groups are operating and working with clearing the base, the sacral, and the solar. And it's not that you clear it and then you're done. It's a forever evolving process, but it gets easier. And you go into the next level. But once you are going base, sacral, solar, it's then to move into the heart space. I have a whole masterclass to do on chakras at some time, whenever it feels right. I have a billion things in my mind. But if you have got basic needs unmet, if you have got a lot of stuff around relationships, which is sacral, that you haven't dealt with, if you still really find it challenging to step up, speak your truth, etc., it can be very difficult to actually operate from a place of forgiveness and love. But coming back to the question, if I send someone love, how does that actually happen? Well, I do believe you've truly got to know it, feel it, experience it, embody the feeling of love. Now, I would say, okay, I've got a couple of examples. So one can be children. However, I always give space because sometimes you don't actually really love your children sometimes, even though we're taught about unconditional love. But again, this is all context, is that majority of the time is that there can be an unconditional love for your child. Okay. Um, Now, the other thing for those of you who don't have human children, it can be fur children. And look, I have a child, I have an 8-year-old, and I have a dog and a horse that I absolutely love. And I see the unconditional love that my daughter has for our dog, our sausage dog. It's just so funny, and it's such an amazing feeling watching them together and how they interact. And so it's hard to describe love unless you've really experienced it. But I've been sitting there reflecting, going, oh my gosh, I love my child, I love my dog, and I love my horse so much. And actually, one of the thoughts that crossed my mind, one of the many random tangents and thoughts that crossed my mind the other day, is that I love them so much, and the thought of what will happen when they're no longer in this world. You know, what happens if they die soon? So I work a lot with people around fear of death and loss, fear of dying, and I want to say that this stuff crosses my mind as well. And so what I usually coach and say back to people is to not have so much of a fear of dying. It's to live life in the present with these people, with yourself, etc. And so it was this glimpse of going, okay, well, how can I spend the most quality time with them so that if they aren't on this earth for a long time, then I can be happy and not have the regrets that I should have done things differently. So I share that in terms of I can feel the love that Violet has for Lola, our little sausage dog. She definitely doesn't have it for the horse that I have. Um, this conversation goes so much deeper, but you can feel, oh, she'll even say to me sometimes, like I say, I love you, Violet. And she's like, no, you don't. I'm like, okay. And then other times she will really receive it. And kids are amazing. They're very sensitive. So are animals as well. And humans, and adults in particular, if we allow ourselves to be available for this. So, I know it can be challenging if you feel like you haven't experienced love or the love was very conditional. I'll love you if you do this or do that or be this way. Um, and I would say that most people have been in a relationship where you have felt a love or a lust and experienced that. Maybe some of you haven't, but it is one of those things that sometimes if you desire to feel what love is, you just tune into conversations like this and little bits and pieces will land. But love is, I would say it's more on that energetic level that it's felt. If I go way back to what I was saying at the start, is that we can feel when someone's angry, we can see when someone's depressed. We can see, feel, hear it in their voice. So there are a number of senses that are involved when love is felt or any other emotion or state of being. Now, it may be, I'm just going to take a guess or assume or go on this tangent, is that you might be sending someone love, but also remember that other humans have got their stuff to do, their work to do. They're not always open to this emotional work, and we've got to honor that time and journey, and it may not ever come to fruition in this lifetime, is that that person may have their own wounding, their own experiences. That means that they've got issues around receiving the love that you might give them. And so sometimes, as I said, you might give it over a lifetime and it doesn't land because that person has got their own blocks. Or sometimes it takes a moment. It's not that all of a sudden I feel love towards this person. They feel it and they respond to it. But that would be amazing, right? So I think that's the first part answered, and I would love to know. It's very much on an energetic vibration and frequency, and I even hear myself say those words going years ago. I listened to that stuff, but I was like, oh, I don't get what you're talking about. Anyway, I get it now. Okay, so the next part, I think this is just sort of a separate question. In yoga and Vipassana, So Vipassana is a type of meditation, um, it was a very pivotal experience for me to do it a number of times, including when I was pregnant. So in yoga and Vipassana, I've been told to breathe into your pain. Now this is interesting. I think being told to breathe into your pain is a little bit like forgive and love. And I have this social post brewing, and I need to, I've said it probably 100 times, create a note in my phone where I can jot down the cliche sayings that aren't really helpful or need a little bit more depth and explanation to them. Uh, so something like breathe through your pain. I bet if we got like 10 or 100 people lined up and had them write down what breathe through your pain meant to them, you'd get 10 or 100 different answers. So it can have so many different meanings. And I've done various types of yoga and I have experienced Vipassana. And so my interpretation of what both these mean might be completely different to what one might think it's intended to mean or what your experience and meaning would hold. So how do I breathe into a body part? And I think that that's actually a good explanation of what I'm saying is that, okay, this person is saying, how do I breathe into a body part if I'm meant to breathe into my pain? So there's many different styles of yoga, and I think of yin yoga, which is more that holding the poses for 60 to 90 seconds, and you might feel a stretch. Now, our immediate reaction is to move away from discomfort. But then we know, and we've seen people who are yogis and stretchy and seem to have an amazing life outside of just their flexibility of their physical body, is that we can see them as evidence of someone who has done this yin yoga, moved through that discomfort. So we go, okay, let's get through this next 90 seconds. Let's get through the next 5 sessions, 10 weeks, year, and see what does my body feel like and how does the rest of me respond as a result of changing my physical body. So let's tie this into the first part of the question. And so tying in Vipassana and yoga is Vipassana focuses a lot on breath and sensation, not altering your breath. Or maybe this is something that I sort of really picked up more in osteo world, is that breath is usually one of the first things that will go when the body feels stress. So it'll stop, it'll get shallow, it'll get deep and relaxed when we're sleeping. I remember looking at Violet when she was little and still now, just like how relaxed and how much she actually just naturally belly breathes. And I hope it stays that way. So Vipassana is about sensation and pain is sensation. And I very much believe that pain is emotionally driven as well. So for me, I don't actually necessarily interpret breathing into your pain as breathe into the body part. It can could be a number of things, and different cues will help different people. But it could simply be breathe and making sure that your breath isn't shallow, it isn't super deep, it isn't controlled. It is just normal and relaxed breath that allows your body to let go. So I think it's just our past experiences and the context and meaning that we put behind words and sentences. So for some people, it could be that breathing into a body part and visualizing that actually helps. So I know that when I used to treat people and I'd stick my fingers in their jaw to release their jaw, and there's a link to the cervix, I do it a lot on pregnant women to induce their babies, is I would say, breathe down into your pelvis, into your cervix, and take the breath down there versus keeping the breath up here because I'm sticking my finger in your jaw, in your mouth, in your muscles, and it's incredibly painful. So it doesn't even have to be in yoga. It could be a new activity that you're doing. Like if you're learning to drive a car and all of a sudden your breath is just because you're so in your head and you're not in your body, your breath is different. So it's like breathe into your arms, breathe down, just breathe. So that's what I'm going to say on that. And yeah, it too shall pass is a very common saying as well. And I do think it is a valuable one. It doesn't go down very well when you're in the moment of the pain though. Breathe into your plan, explore it, and the pain will pass. Because, most of the time yoga is done in a group session. You can do one to one. And it would really depend on the style of teacher and the questions that you may or may not ask as to how they could cater that response for you. So in Vipassana, it's a very like set teaching. It's pre-recorded really, and you don't have the opportunity to ask questions. You ask a question and they tell you to just come back to the practice and the answers are within. um, yeah, that's a huge question. I think I've answered enough on that. And I know we're going to be working together, which I'm really excited about. So we could go a little bit deeper on one of the space calls. So, how do I evolve to a point where I can have an understanding and I guess control over my emotions and their outcomes? All right, so I did a recent social media post and it goes along the lines of as soon as we try and understand, as soon as we start to try and put logic, numbers, mathematics behind things, we get in our head, we get into our mind, and that is operating from the masculine energy. When we're in the being, we get to experience energetics. It's the being, and that's the feminine. And so, over particularly the last, I've got to make sure I stop saying 6 months, but now over the last 9 months, I've known about feminine energy. I've tried to do the things which is masculine, which is actually not the correct approach. I really feel like I've experienced what feminine energetics is, but I've had to go and experience it because I don't believe it's necessarily experienced through the doing, which is just how the majority of us operate in Western society is what do I have to do? What do I have to do to relax? What do I have to do to get my nervous system regulated? What do I have to do to become more feminine? What do I have to do to get into embodiment? This is do. And so that's where I hear people's language and I know they haven't got it, they haven't embodied it, they're still trying to understand. So what I have learnt for myself from my own experience that I want to create and share the evidence of for you to keep on exploring is that now, as soon as I try and understand or I ask how or I want something to fix, I know that I've gone too far. And actually, I need to drop the thing and I need to go back into just being in this space and let things unfold. Now, I guess my fear when I say that is too many people put their hands up and surrender and they haven't done the work or created the foundation. The work is the masculine, but I did another post recently, maybe it was on my personal page, that with masculine structure comes feminine flow. So this is where when I get to interact with an individual and I know them more, it's like, okay, have you put the structure in place? Have you put the simple foundation in place so that you can experience the flow? Or were you trying to chase the flow too quickly before you had the structure? And that's why it's just not happening. Because to be honest, like doing the work and putting the structure in isn't fun for a lot of people. And the mind tries to overcomplicate it. So what I see in this question is a very masculine approach. How do I do? How do I evolve to a point where I have an understanding using the mind to control? Nothing is really in our control over my emotions and their outcomes. Yes, Julie, the ongoing learning from this masculine structure allows feminine flow. I didn't realize anyone was watching. It doesn't show me any numbers going on here. So I hear when I read this, I go, just nothing. Do nothing right now. Stop trying to understand it. Stop trying to control your emotions. Because it's not that we ever want to not have bad or negative emotions. That's like the premise of my work is the dark stuff. I actually learnt a lot of why I love the dark stuff the other day. If you've been with me, you'll remember I say it's feeling sadness, anger, depression. It is feeling all of it, as much as the highs, the celebrations, the joy, and not viewing the anger, the depression, and moments of sadness as anything bad. As a result of trying to push it away, we actually get it to speak to us louder. And then that's when it sometimes will start to manifest in the physical body. And then just remember, I'm really emphasizing it's not just physical body manifestations, it's mental states, it's behavioral states. So it's a journey. The evolution is a journey. As I said, I'm hearing myself talk about energetics and emotions and all sorts of stuff. And I know that this is going to go over some of your heads. But if your body is like resonating with this and just still listening to me for some reason, I promise it's going to land if you just stay tuned into this. A little bit like me trying to understand, how do I get more into the feminine? What do I do? How do I understand it? Give me something. I kept staying tapped in. I kept listening. I kept experiencing. And then I did nothing, and then it landed for me. And probably my breakthrough around embodiment was I would go off and do courses, and all of these courses were valuable, but I just never resonated with doing breathing practices, or I'd been to ecstatic dance a couple of times. I loved it, but I just never felt the draw to go all of the time. I and I was in the doing, and I could feel that, and I could feel that in the sense that I just couldn't get myself there. But my breakthrough was when I got my horse. I talk a lot about her, Tilly, and just feeling the freedom and feeling like nothing else mattered when I was on my horse, especially when we were galloping out in the open. And it landed for me whilst I was on a female pleasure and embodiment course that I was doing. I was like, that's it. I was looking for something else, but actually I already experienced the embodiment, and it's in riding my horse. So everyone's version of experiencing joy, freedom, bliss, embodiment of whatever. I mean, embodiment of lots of things would be amazing, but sometimes it's not in doing anything else beyond what you already have available to you. You don't have to have a horse to have embodiment, but there's going to be some people that really resonate with that when I say that. So almost my answer to that is I'm not going to answer it. And we get to work together in the space, which I'm really excited about. The space is for people who have been on release with me or emotional body training. And if you haven't done anything with me, release is coming up in August. And I'm so excited because I know you, and I know that lots of other people that come to sit, release, and resit it evolve every single time. And for those of you who have been with me since the very, very early days, almost, yeah, from the start, you have given me feedback. You've seen how I've evolved. And so I don't want to stay stuck in old teachings. And yeah, it's a really, really fun journey. And the stuff and the things that I teach now weren't accessible or available to me way back in the day, early 2020, when I really put myself out there into this space. So I'm almost 30 minutes in. As I said, I read the questions and my mind tries to grasp it. How am I going to answer this? But what I have learned is that I just have to hit the live button, read it out, and whoever's up there helping me with my answer goes, right, let's give her the answers. And I feel like I answered that one to my best capability at the moment. I hope you are having an amazing weekend. There is one more great question on the thread before we kick into July. And if you have made it to the end, if something has drawn you to listen to the end, then release is coming up in August. If you are interested, I haven't officially launched it, but if you are interested, I'm asking you to message me and I'm going to send you a link.